Do you read me?
Be advised, you are coming in weak and unreadable.
Say again, Com Tower. This is Pacho. Do you read me?
Pacho, this is Com Tower. I read you Lima Charlie.
Com Tower, Com Tower. Request permission to launch and commence the field op. Over.
Stand by. Pacho, permission granted. I say again, permission granted.
Roger that. Launching podcast in 3, 2. You are now entering the field op with your host, Pacho Correa, Chief Warrant Officer 3, United States Marine Corps retired. Get some. Hurrah! This is Pacho. Do you read me?
Be advised, you are coming in weak.
This is Pacho. Do you read me?
Be advised, you are coming in weak and unreadable.
Say again, Com Tower. This is Pacho. Do you read me?
Pacho, this is Com Tower. I read you Lima Charlie.
Com Tower, Com Tower. Request permission to launch and commence the field op. Over.
Stand by. Pacho, permission granted. I say again, permission granted.
Roger that. Launching podcast in 3, 2. You are now entering the field op with your host, Pacho Correa, Chief Warrant Officer 3, United States Marine Corps retired. Get some. Hurrah! Get some. Hurrah. What's going on, everybody? Sorry about that. A little bit of technical difficulties on the right here on the studio. But nonetheless, it's Baby Friday is upon us. Friday night's Eve, but goddamn, it's almost the weekend. Hey, we got an amazing show for you today. We get it with an amazing guest, like we usually do around this time. But before we get on all that happy horse stuff, let's get all the pleasantries and all the logistics out of the way. Hey, when was the last time, when was the last time that are you concerned about how the market has been performing? Are you concerned that, that you've been dipping into your savings, your 401k, maybe turning into that 101k, and you're thinking of, and you're wondering how you can stop the bleeding and stop dipping into those funds and actually start saving and preserving something for your future? Well, we have that solution for you. So that way you can stop the bleeding, start investing some money for your future. It doesn't matter if if you're getting out of the service, you still left your TSP behind at while you were in the service with the DoD, or maybe you're in between jobs right now that you left the military. Nonetheless, hey, the folks at the Money Pro can help you. So you can go to their website at meetthemoneypro.com. And there's a link right there to meet with them, and they can help you put some amazing strategies together that one will stop the bleeding, you start preserving your capital, and maybe grow and double your investment, so that if you're trying to save for retirement, maybe send your kids to college, buy a house, doesn't really matter. Those folks over there are amazing. I'm part of that group as well. So check them out and set up a free strategy session. What's the worst that can happen? That they give some really amazing information, and you can actually start implementing right then and there. So if that's something that suits you and kind of tickles your fancy per se, then go ahead and check them out. Also, hey, when was the last time you had your VA compensation, your claims? Are you at 80%? Are you at 90%? Are you still trying to get that 800% permanent total? Well, if you need help with that, one, the PAC Act has given great provisions and some I guess avenues of approach that it'll get you closer to that 100%. And I highly recommend that you also work with a VSO, somebody from maybe the DAV, Disabled American Veterans, or somebody from the VA at one of your county offices or city offices that they're there, and help you resubmit your package. Or if you have some questions and you need to be pointed in the right direction, I'll give yours truly right here a call, and or send me a DM over social media. You guys know where to find me: TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, you name it. I'm all over. I'm all over there. So if you need help, I'll point you in the right direction. All right. So hey, look, in this show we support the great American Constitution. Get some. And a lot of us fought. I fought and defended our great Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And that oath has never expired. So if you like what you hear, stick around. And if you support the right to bear arms, freedom of speech, agree to disagree, all that good stuff, then there's some really good stuff on all my channels. By the way, help me pump up the analytics on my YouTube channel. I mean, heck, I got over 7,000 followers here on Facebook. So why don't you 7,000 just kind of go there and hit like, subscribe, and follow, and all that good stuff, and just help the numbers for me, help brother out. All right. So, but I think that's pretty much it. Yeah. So let me introduce you. My next guest is an amazing person. We met at a networking event, and she shared with me her story and how she's helping people. Not to give too much on the show, but how she's helping people overcome some tragedies in their life. And I think this is something that resonates with a lot of us, because not only have we been there a time or two, we lost friends, not only through battle, but also in suicide as well. So with that being said, everybody, I'd like to introduce everybody to Miss Zuri Gunther. How are you, Zuri?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. How are you?
I'm doing great. Welcome to the field op.
Thank you.
Usually when we have a service member, we like to say, they introduce themselves. Hey, I represent this branch.
Mm-hmm.
This is my MOS, my job in the military, whatever. But just give us just a little bit about who you are, and then and what you do, and then we'll dive right in.
Okay. So, as you said, I am Zuri Gunther. I am a grief to growth transformation coach, and I was doing this probably for the past 4 years through a personal tragedy that I had take place. And so, through that story, I found my resilience, I found my purpose, and now I turned my grief into grace, tragedy to triumph, and I'm reaching out to help others do the same.
That's amazing. And yeah, just like I was telling our the audience, that you have an amazing story. Obviously, due to there's tragedy there. So could you share with us, Zuri, your personal story, and how that loss shaped your journey towards becoming a transformation coach?
Absolutely, absolutely. So, like I said, it was about 4 years ago. I unexpectedly lost my 19-year-old son, and it was in the middle of COVID. He was killed, and that was something that, one doesn't expect. We all think that we're going to go before our children, but that did happen. And as I was going through that process, I didn't really think that I was doing anything different, but my response to that tragedy, it was different. It was just really uncommon, I guess you would say. Just the way I started to transition from grief into grace, a lot of people just kind of was asking me, like, what are you doing different? And I didn't really think that I was doing anything, because it was just my natural response to, something that was beyond my control. And
Right.
so as I started to kind of go through that process and things kind of started settling, I realized, okay, so maybe, what I did do was different, because there's people that are reaching out and asking me if I'm okay, or they're thinking that, the other shoe's going to fall off, or I'm just going to end up in the crazy home. But that never happened. And so once, I got through the other side, and, I sat in my grief, I realized this isn't some place that I want to stay. and I started thinking about what I was thinking about, metacognitive skills. I started making sure that I was nurturing myself. I started thinking about things that actually helped give me life versus thinking about the death of my son. And by doing
Right.
that, I was able to transform my life. And I decided to be brave. I used to say I wasn't a public speaker, but I put out a YouTube video and just told my son's story and what happened. And just from that one video, people started reaching out to me for help. And then that's when I realized, well, you really have been a coach, your whole life. And why not take this story and turn it into something wonderful by touching people with this story and letting them know you really can have another perspective if you choose to, choose legacy over loss. And so that's what I'm doing now.
And no, that's amazing. And again, every time we talk about it, just I can't even imagine being in place in such a situation.
Mm.
So this, as you were kind of in your own way, because we've talked about this, you were in your own way, I guess, for somewhat soothing yourself
Mhm.
and getting over that. Is that how you found the strength to kind of redefine your purpose? And obviously facing such profound grief that
Mhm.
the conventional us,
Yeah.
like, oh my God, why did this happen? You
Mhm.
went about it in a different approach.
I did. I did. So, we say all the time, holistic healing, mind, body, spirit. And, I'd say probably about 6 months before he passed, I was having a very different experience just connecting with myself. We talk about meditating all the time and, mindfulness. And COVID was happening. I was furloughed from my job. I had just got out of a relationship. And so I had nothing but time to kind of just get quiet and be in tune
Right.
with myself and about how I would feel about a situation, not because of anything outside of me. And just me doing that actually helped me become very grounded. And so by the time this happened, it was 6 months later, I was really just, like I said, so much in tune with myself that it wasn't something that I could be influenced by. So when I talk about that, you hear somebody passes and, your first response is like, oh, I'm so sorry for your loss. And, with me, it's something like, okay, well, you have my condolences. And you take that time to feel it, like I said. But with me, it was more so, what I was thinking about. So, like I said, if I thought about what actually happened and it was a violent death, um, everything in my body would start to feel that. My mind, there was a time where I couldn't get off the floor when it first happened because I started thinking about how he died. And as I tuned in with myself and just was thinking about, well, what was it that you were thinking about before this? And it was his life. And because I was thinking about his life and his smile and his connection with people, I was able to connect my spirit, my mind, my body, and actually move forward in a way that, people just couldn't understand. I planned his service, I did his obituary, I spoke at his service. And I asked people, show up the way that you would want to if you were taking one last picture with him. And, in the middle of COVID, people were scared to go to their family member's house or to a friend's house. And, being there, seeing that people came from 6 different states to celebrate
Wow.
my son's life. We grew up, or I raised them in Colorado and moved here kind of, when they were teenagers. And his preschool teacher came from Colorado. His high school,
Wow.
teacher came. In his Tinder life, he had 4 jobs. All of HR was there. And so by me kind of just honing in on what I felt, I was able to see so many beautiful moments from something that was a tragedy. Like these people had a connection with my 19-year-old son. They risked their lives to come celebrate him, and you were his mom. There was a point in time where he had his own place. He was an old soul, first of all. He just was doing all the things. He was 19, had his own place. Had his own car. He was awesome. But there was a time where someone said to me, why are you going to clean out his apartment? Someone else should be doing that for you. And I thought to myself, she's not going to understand what I'm going to say, but I'm going to say it anyways. And I said, this is something that I need to do because I need to go through this process. So by me honing in on what I felt and not really being influenced by what other people thought was right for me, I owned my own healing process. So then I went to his house and, I was cleaning out his pantry and looking in his refrigerator, getting everything cleaned out to take things from the apartment. And there I got to see he was listening to me the whole time I was raising him. He had almond milk in his refrigerator and healthy choices for a 19-year-old. I thought that was awesome. His cleaning supplies were, supplies that I used at home. The way his closet was organized, he took all of those things from me. And so, you always wonder, is your kid listening to you? Do they take those things with you? And I was able to see he absolutely did. But if you can imagine what I would have missed out on if I chose to listen to everyone else around me. I think it's very important when you're going through something like this. It's important to have the right people around you. But in this time, just where I was, it was a sensitive time. The world was in a very different place. And I had enough wisdom, by meditating and being intentional about connecting with myself. The energy behind people's empathy was not going to be right for me because I
Yeah.
felt, my son, he's in a good place. He's not dealing with a lot of the things that we're dealing with anymore. And I'm okay with him finishing his assignment, whatever he came here to do. He's gone. He's back with God. But when people would come, I had to be careful to maintain that and not magnify whatever it was they were feeling. And I found myself a couple times, they're like, "Oh my gosh." And I was like, "Oh, wait a minute. That's not actually what I'm feeling." So I had to
Right.
be intentional about those boundaries to make sure that I was honing in and, keeping a safe place for myself to be able to not, go through it, but grow through it, sitting with the pain, making sure that I was being intentional about feeling it, crying when I needed to. But, having those moments be a reflection of what I actually felt and not, because someone said I should feel some way or this was the right way to grieve. I've heard that, through the years about being the right way to grieve and making sure that you are processing it. And, here we are 4 years later, I'm singing the same tune. I learned so much from him. Just how to live out loud. I think I was very afraid to do things before, but watching my son take risks and find new adventures. And I was like, we're only here a short period of time. And so I'm going
Yeah.
to do that. Now I've traveled internationally and just done a lot of things that, he would have done if he was still here. Yeah.
Right. No, and I think a good point that you said that could be pretty much applied. I
Mhm.
think in life as a whole is that even when, because we even do it as parents,
Mhm.
even when people think that they have your best interest at heart.
Yeah.
Oh, don't do this. Oh, why
Mhm.
are you doing that? Why are you going into this job? Or
Yeah.
no, they're trying to protect you.
Yes.
But hindsight 2020, they're also holding you back or
Yeah.
preventing you from seeing how in your case, your son, that, hey, look,
Mhm.
hey, mom, I was listening, by the way.
Yeah.
All my stuff is covered in a line. I'm using
Yeah.
the same cleaning products.
Yeah.
So, and
Yeah.
again, those type of things. And have we let, their best interest kind of shadow our decisions,
Mhm.
then we could be missing out a lot of
So many
things.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did you discover that helping others was kind of it was part of your healing process or your calling, so to speak?
Well, I mean, my whole career has been about helping others. This was just a
Okay.
different way to do it. I
Right.
spent 20 years in the medical field, helping others. And then, I was a corporate recruiter for a while. So I helped others find their, passion in their careers and put them in positions. And when I thought about everything, I'm like, you've really always been a coach. You've just done it in different ways, and you weren't getting paid to do that, But I think for me, seeing people come through this process is really what fuels me, to see, the name of my company is called The Me I Never Knew. And that was birthed because I became a version of myself I didn't know existed. Like on the other side of this, if you asked me, I don't know, 10 years ago, what would happen if, this happened to you? And I wouldn't been able to tell you that I would be the person I am today. And so because I was able to walk through that, attest to it, see my own transition, I'm like, what would this be able to do if I was able to help people have a different perspective on something that is so, heavy as grief? A lot of people that I talk to, they ask that same question. And, my most authentic response to them is love is not conditional, it's unconditional. And the only reason why I have grief in the first place was because of the root of the love that I had for my son.
Right.
And so taking myself back to those feelings, like just think about it. If you watch anybody, talk about the death of their loved one, you can see how when they're talking about the portion of death, their complete body language changes. But then when you start talking about their life, it's like they get, very excited and their face lights up because of those are
Right.
all the things
Yeah.
our loved one was teaching us and showing us as they were here. Those are the memories that aren't going to go anywhere. And so, when I was talking to my very first client, um, I had no idea, what I was doing. I was just doing what I felt. It wasn't, the formatics of just, coaching, but I was just talking to her from my heart. And I gave her this analogy and I told her, I said, when a loved one passes away, if you think about a balloon, you blow air into a balloon. And while that, balloon is here, it's making people happy. It's typically at happy occasions, weddings and, birthdays and things of that sort. But then when the air comes out of that balloon, it's just a balloon, but the air is still around you. You just can't see it. That's exactly how our loved ones are. We have a spirit
Wow.
and you can feel them. You can feel, your loved one around you. You hear so many stories about people talking about this, but I can attest to it. I told you I worked in the medical field for like 20 years. I used to be afraid of that stuff, like, don't come bother me because, but, when my son passed, I was like, okay. And I told him, I said, listen, don't come in here pulling my toes or doing anything crazy, but I want to know that you're good. And there were several things that happened that were just unexplainable. That was like, oh my gosh. And I was like, I can feel him. And his younger brother was like, Mom, I can feel him so strong. And so, going back to that analogy about the balloon and the air coming out of the balloon, it's like they're still surrounding us. And I think when people pass, because we're in, a very physical, where everything we do is physical, like touch,
Right.
we focus on that. So when they ascend and their physical, presence isn't here, we get caught up in that and we just think like they're gone forever. And so focusing on, just like us, they're multidimensional beings. They had a spirit, they had mind, they had body. We forget about the other two things, and we have it in our memory. We have the times that we shared with them that comes from that. But being able to connect to your spirituality actually helps you hone in on that piece and remind you like, well, why don't you, tap into this and remember that. And having that perspective on it is everything, and being able to coach people to just find those tools. All it is just having someone hear that message. Like I never thought about it that way, and being able to help them go through the process and not just tell them, but hold their hand, walk through the process with them is, a world of difference. I have my clients come back and say, I really am a version of myself that I never knew could happen from something like this. And that's really why I'm doing this is because, I want to be able to help people in that way.
Wow.
Yeah.
And obviously there's resilience, in that healing process. And
Mhm.
many of us veterans, we face grief, we face
Mhm.
loss, or there's a lot of challenges that come with being a
Yeah.
service member. So
Yeah.
how can service members, or how can they begin to process these these experiences,
Yeah.
that the loss of a buddy, this whether in combat, or a lot of us, we've been a time or two, lost somebody due to suicide. I mean, it does happen.
Yeah.
So how can
Yeah.
they experience or process these things briefly, in a healthy way?
So, first and foremost, what I would like to say is that, I want to make a clear distinction between therapy and counseling and coaching,
Right.
because
Okay. Yes.
sometimes, people pass and it is very traumatic. You might have seen somebody die,
Hmm.
and that's, a whole different caveat. So, I do want to make sure that we're, honing in on they're different because there are
Right.
times where people do need to go to counseling.
Of
They
course.
need to go to therapy to be able to get through that trauma, and talk
100%.
about it. So many times, service members are taught to suppress their feelings and just
Oh
get
yeah.
through it. You're strong, you're in combat, you can do this. But I think what's forgotten is that before anything, we have so many labels, we have so many titles. They were a person before they were a soldier.
Wow.
So coming out of the service, we forget that. And everyone's like, thank you for your service, and we appreciate you, and that's what they see, but they forget about the person. And so honing back on that, you are just like me, the divine in me sees the divine in you, and nurturing and honoring that piece of the person, you know that's what we really need to focus on. If you have a family member, a friend that was a service member, and you know that they're probably struggling with something, they might not feel comfortable talking about it, but be that lending ear to tell them, like, hey, I'll go to counseling with you, or you can talk to me about this. Support them, to let them know that it is okay and that they're not alone. And so when they're getting through that therapy piece or the counseling piece, and they've arrived to the place where they can, embrace what has happened and say, yes, this has happened, because that's the first part of it. After that comes the coaching, because now you're ready to move forward and you're pulling out the tools to be able to do that.
Wow. No, that, and yes, obviously, there are situations that require, obviously, therapy, and
Mhm,
and much more, I guess, intrusive ways of, to get us back on track after a tragic event, a loss, and what have you.
mhm.
And a lot of us are concerned, obviously, you know and nothing against the system, by no means.
Yeah.
It's the reality is that it's much easier at times to
Mhm.
prescribe, put a band-aid, and throw a pill at it, so to speak, or
Right.
meds, rather than to get to the root cause of the problem, and
Mhm,
finding some alternative ways for
mhm.
those individuals to deal and cope and be able to move on.
Yeah,
Again, as you mentioned, they're still here. We just, it's kind of like, we're three-dimensional, so to speak, where we just
absolutely.
can't, right now we're kind of limited. So, but
Yeah. Yeah.
oh, go ahead, sorry.
Oh, no, I was agreeing with you. I said, yeah.
No, but let me ask you this. So how does
Yeah.
mental and spiritual, as well as physical well-being, how does that work together in being able to overcome life struggles, particularly loss and such?
Yeah. So this is one of my favorite things to explain, and be able to kind of wrap people's mind around this. So,
Okay.
we've heard about, energy, frequency, and vibration, and it's said
Yes.
in that
Yes.
order. And lots of times you hear people say mind, body, spirit. You don't hear them
Right.
say
Right.
spirit, mind, body. And so, one day, going through this process, because I, make it make sense, right? I was just sitting in meditation and I was thinking, and I'm like, man, this is why order is important. Because if, I think it was Nikola Tesla, like energy, frequency, and vibration, if you understand that, then you understand how the universe works. So if you apply that to spirit, mind, body, then you'll see the connection. Because, we're like, before you do anything, your mind tells your body what to do. What is influencing your mind? What is it? Is it music? Is it what other people are doing? When you find the time to
Right.
calm your mind and you have that mindfulness and you meditate and you clear your mind, you people run away from silence. Silence is one of the best things that can happen to us, because then you can hear your intuition. You can hear that small, still voice influence those thoughts, and be intentional about how you feel. So when you connect all three of them, so say for instance, you do meditate, your mind is being influenced by that meditation, the calm, the peace, and you'll find yourself doing things that are sometimes beyond logic, but then you see, oh, well, this is why. So, perfect example, when I was telling you, when my son passed, I, there was a day where I was, on the floor and I was crying, and I was like, how did I get here? Because I was doing so well before. Like, well, obviously you're going to feel something. But my spirit was, well, this is what you were doing. There was no one there to tell me, how do I get out of this place? It was my spirit that was like, well, you were thinking about his life before, and now you're thinking about his death. So then, because my thoughts changed, or what I was thinking about, then my strength came back. That my body coincided with the thoughts that came from my spirit.
Wow.
So it's the
Yes.
same, when you're thinking about, well, when you're not thinking about what you put in your body, say for
Yeah.
instance, you're eating something and you continually get heartburn, or, upset stomach or whatever, we tend to just take a pill to get rid of that pain. But we don't actually stop and think, like, why don't I just stop doing that? So that my body won't feel that. But you're not stopping to think. But if you if you're influenced by your spirit, it's like this doesn't feel good to us, or this doesn't, work for us, then you're having a different response throughout all three, dimensions of yourself.
I was just kind of, I made it. I'm kind of smiling because when you said about the pill and the heart,
Uh-oh.
I
Uh-oh.
can't. I love being Colombian, born and raised. I mean, coffee is like it's
Mhm.
everything. Well,
Yeah.
earlier this week, and I've been having off topic, but I've been having some issues. So I went to the doc. Obviously, when you're, in your 50s, and you're like, hey, let me just go get this checked out. So long story short,
Mhm.
the doctor's
Yeah.
Colombian too. He's like, hey, my man, here's some pills, but you're gonna have to cut off X. He gave me a list, and coffee was there, chocolate was
Yeah.
there, and
Yeah.
I'm like, man. And so
Yeah.
what do you give me the pill for? Because well, it's gonna calm down what do you got
Mhm.
going, but we're getting to the root of the
To the
problem.
real
So
problem. And
yeah,
and it literally, it's just your body will work the way it's supposed to if you just listen to it. Like, it's telling you, "We don't want this," but you're just like, "Well, it tastes good." And, you're going off of your
yeah,
senses, like, "Oh, it smells so good, and I'm just gonna eat this." And, I'm not innocent, I like to eat clean, but man, those sweets, they'll get you. And then when you've had too much. But again, if you're aligning yourself, like, is this the best choice for me? Then you're
right,
aligning your body, or, vice versa. If you are eating something and you don't feel good, think about it. You can't think straight. You're distracted. So then one affects the other. You're not having clear thoughts. A lot, we're talking about lion's mane and all this stuff to get back for mental clarity. What is it that
right.
you're putting in your system? But if you're aligned, again, your spirituality is, influencing all of those things, then you're finding yourself moving about life in a way that's very, very different. And, I can attest that that's exactly what happened to me, going through this process. We're talking about everyday things, but it's like if you're living your life that way already, when tragedy comes or an adversity comes, you are going to deal with it differently because this has now become a way of life for you. It's not something that you just call on when you need it, it's your way of life. And so again, when something happens, you're kind of preparing for the marathon. You don't just show up to a race and say, okay, I'm about to run this race. You kind of start preparing for that, ahead of time. Now, I didn't know that I was preparing for something like this, but it was
Right.
like when it happened, I was like, man, this mindfulness and all of these things that I'm doing really benefited me when it came to something like this. So now, being the observer of your life, you can go back and look at how you were able to grow through the situation and transform and find a new purpose by doing these things. And so now you continue to just rinse and repeat. And so when something else comes, it may not seem like it's as big, because you're living your life that way. It's become a lifestyle.
No, it's very, very, very profound. That last portion that you said.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this.
Mhm.
If we coping mechanisms, believe me, I used to be number one at this for many
Yeah.
other reasons, but what are just some brief things, and obviously this would require long sessions with you and so on, but if someone's feeling disconnected
Mhm.
after a loss or a transition per se,
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
what would be one step they can take to begin to kind of start reconnecting and feeling that like themselves, as well as
Mhm.
that establishing that connection with others once again.
Yeah. So, first and foremost, I'm always going to say mindfulness, being intentional, thinking about what you're thinking about, because lots of
Okay.
times that changes. That's a metacognitive skill. Like if you're thinking
Right.
about doom and gloom and you stop and like, I don't like how this feels. It's making me feel, change it. It's like changing the radio station. You can absolutely change what it is that you're thinking about. Physical activity, getting in nature, grounding, doing things that makes your body physically feel good is also another way of connecting. Journaling is really good. Getting your thoughts down on paper and being able to express it. It's a way of getting it out. If you don't want to talk to someone, it's a way of being able to, have it come out in a way that's going to be conducive for you. And rest. Listening to your body, making sure you're resting when you need to. I think sometimes we feel like we always have to be doing something, but sometimes it's just important to rest because when you do that, you do find answers. You can think more clearly when you're giving yourself that grace.
No, and something that you said is that if you don't like the feeling, change it. It's kind of like, and as simple as that as it is,
Mm,
it's like going to, there used to be a joke that I used to hear as a kid, but I mean it's pretty old, but it would say, "Hey doctor, it hurts when I do this," and then the doctor says, "Well, don't do that." You know
right.
that
Yeah.
that'll be $200. You know what I'm saying? I
Right.
mean,
Right.
it's
Right.
it's
Yeah.
literally that simple.
Yeah. I mean, I think, it's just somebody calling it to your attention. We have so many things that we have power over that we've given our power away to. One of the things that came to mind is I like to really tie back, things that we live in this world as far as like the physical world, and then
Right.
think about it on a deeper level. And I told you I was a recruiter, and people would come to me all the time and they would say, "Here's my resume. Tell me where you think I would be a good fit." And I would sit back. This is how I knew I was a coach too, because I was coaching in my job. But I would sit back and I would just ask them, like, "You want me to find you a job?" And they're like, "Yes." And I said, "Okay, well, let me ask you something. If you were to go to the shoe store and you're wanting to pick out some shoes, would you go to the clerk and say, 'Hey, pick me some shoes?' Would you go ask them to do that for you?" And they're like, "No." I'm like, "Well, why?" "Because they don't know what I like." I said, "Okay, but that's just shoes. You're asking me to look at your resume and tell you where you're going to spend the next few years and 40 hours plus a week. So why are you doing that?" And like, I never thought about it like that. Well, because all of our life, before, when you're a kid, you kind of just do whatever you want, but you start to get programmed into doing what everyone else is telling you to do to where you
Right.
lose yourself. And so when I would tell them that, go back, you look at it, I can tell you where your transferable skills are, but go back and see what are you passionate about? What do you like doing? So when I would reframe it to them like that, they were just like, "Oh my God, I never thought about that." And then they would come back, "Okay, well, this is what I want to do." I'm like, "Okay, now I can tell you how to get there because you chose it." But why would you give that power away? Why would you do that? Why would you not want to go back to when you were a kid? And what made you light up? What put fire underneath you to make you want to do something? Go back to that feeling. And so being able to tie all that in, to what I'm talking about, we give so much of our power away. Like, you have a choice to choose your career, but you're telling a complete stranger to choose for you. You have the choice on what type of life experience that you want to have, regardless of something that you couldn't change. This is the one thing that you can, if you so choose. Some people don't want to. This isn't for everyone. Some people want to hold on to it. And that's fine. That's their truth. But this message is really for people that want to see something different, that they're just stuck and they don't know how, and it's possible.
Right.
Yeah.
And just to kind of what you just said about, and giving your power to somebody else, that's, I was a military recruiter as well, and
Hmm.
that's kind of like, a kid wanting, taking the ASVAB and doing all that stuff, and then going into the military open contract. In other words,
Yeah.
that, hey, let the let operations put me in whatever job the military wants, instead of just, hey, I like computers, I want to be IT,
Yeah.
whatever else. Why would you even allow yourself, go, let somebody else put you where you're trying to fit basically a square through a round hole per se.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. And then, you wonder where imposter syndrome comes from and all of these other
Oh
things,
yeah. Oh, that's
because
good.
it's like, "Ooh, you don't want to say you're being set up to fail." Like, when you come, to someone, you're kind of coming like, "Oh, I'm at your mercy." But it's like, you're not at someone else's mercy. You have a skill, you have confidence to be able to perform that skill, not what they're telling you to do. So stand on that. And this is where you hear a lot of people talk about healing their inner child, because when you're a child, you don't think that way. You're like, "I
Yeah.
want to be
Yeah.
this and I can be anything that I want to be." And then as you continue to grow, then you start getting influenced by your peers and your parents, and you start taking on all these labels that
Right.
people have assigned to you, and then before you know it, you're not your authentic self. You don't
No.
recognize yourself. Other people, like in the 40s and stuff, they start doing career changes because they've lost themselves. So again, tying all of that back, if you just look at all of those different examples that I gave you, when you tie all that back to grief, then it's like, grief can look many different ways. If you just stop and say, well, what does it mean to me? What does this mean to me? Do I want to have this type of experience where I'm staying in despair because people said, oh, this is how you should feel? Or do I want to
Right.
honor my loved one? Do I want to say, man, I appreciate you being a part of my life, and we're all going there one way or another. I'll see you again, but you taught me something in life, and I'm going to take what you taught me and give it to the rest of the world because I value you and I honor your legacy. And so now I'm going to turn around and do the same. And, that's why we're here. You learn so much from your kids. I think we were talking about that the other day.
Yeah.
Um, when you get to observe children, we think that we're supposed to be telling them what to do and we give them wisdom and we take care of them. But if you flip that perspective, children really are teaching us how to be the best version of ourselves because they're living their life out loud. They're not afraid of anything. They do what they, want to do, and they say how they want to feel and all of the things. They're just very much themselves. And so it's like, oh, I can learn from my children and just, adopt what it is that they're doing in my adult life. We'd all be so much more happier if we lived that way. And don't change them, still give them wisdom, because at the end of the day, you can say all the things they're going to do what they want to do anyway, because it's their life experience,
Right.
right? But if you're just taking those pieces of what it is that they're showing you, I did a moment of reflection earlier today, and it was called Live Your Life Through the Eyes of a Child, looking at the world through the eyes of a child. If you look at a child when they're at a funeral, up until a certain age, they're not crying. Can you think about that? Have you ever seen that? They're
Yeah.
not, crying. They're kind of just there and they're watching what everyone else is doing. And so as they grow, then they're taught like, oh, this is something sad. This is something to be, torn apart about. But they haven't learned that yet. We're showing them that that's the case. If you go in a completely different part of the world, they celebrate someone's ascension. They don't even call it death. They celebrate their life because it's like, well, whatever they were here to do, they completed that assignment. And now they're gone on to, back to the cosmos or heaven or whatever you want to call it. They've gone back. And so, yay for them. Now, let me get my stuff done so that I can graduate as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Zuri, as we're getting ready to wrap up the show, but
Mhm.
I mean, let me ask this: so, how can individuals, I guess, honor their pain while also allowing it to be, I guess, a catalyst for that growth as well as that transformation? Just
Yeah.
briefly, how can they do just some quick tips?
So, honoring your pain is, first of all, being intentional about owning it. Just like your connection with someone else or your bond with them, own that pain because it's real and it's a catalyst to teach you something. Another way to be able to use tools to get through this is talking about it. Like I said, to counselors or coaches, whatever it is that you want to do, talk about that. And, when you're going through that process, make sure that you're honing in that those are truly your feelings, that you're not being influenced by anything else. I think I mentioned this before, journaling, getting out into nature, taking road trips, doing things that your loved one, would have done, different hobbies. Sometimes we have, holidays. We're in the holiday season. My son's favorite holiday was Christmas. And when I'm decorating the tree, I'm thinking about him and what he would have done or the laughs that we would have had, during the holiday season. So still making those memories be part of your everyday, I feel is very important, to honor that person, to honor your pain and help you transition through the process. Because before you know it, you're going to become the me that you never knew on the other side of that pain, just by doing those small, simple tasks, daily, weekly, whatever is appealing for the person.
Man, and he just, man, great job. You just did this with the me, and when you ended it with the me, I never knew. I was like, well, damn. Well, there it
There it
is.
is. Yes.
You know, we talked about some amazing things about,
Mhm,
honoring the self.
mhm.
Seeing it from a different perspective, because
Yeah.
it's true. There, we're all energy.
Mhm,
We're all still here in some
mhm.
way, shape, or form. Focusing on the great things and the memories and the things that they were here to do,
Yeah.
and not see and seeing it from a different perspective, like other cultures, which,
Mhm,
it's something like for us Westerners per se, kind of
mhm.
hard to grasp on. But it's been an amazing show, Zuri. I mean, and we'll definitely bring you back.
Okay.
But let me ask you one last question. If
Hmm.
people want to connect, by the way, if you want to connect with Zuri's on the show descriptions, make sure you go
Sure.
on there, and
Yeah.
you can talk with her. You guys have an amazing. But where else can people find you so they can get more information?
Sure. So it's your life coach, Zuri, on Instagram, the Me I Never Knew Life Coaching Services on Facebook, and I'm also on YouTube where it's under your life coach Zuri as well. Or if you like what you heard and you want to connect directly, go to www.themeIneverknew.com, click on life coaching, and we can set up a free strategy session to see if this is something that's right for you. We'll do an assessment to make sure, and then we'll go on through the process.
Zuri, thanks so much for your time. Amazing work that you do.
Thank
It's
you.
truly appreciated,
Thank
and
you.
we'll definitely this is something that we can bring you on as a recurring guest, because I think reminding others of these things, and staying on this side of the fence and not on the other side, which can lead you into that that rabbit hole that some unfortunately a lot of us have never returned from. So, but
Mhm.
thanks so much for your time, Zuri,
My
and it was great
pleasure.
connecting you.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks so much. Bye bye. Hey everybody. What an amazing show, and what an amazing message. And this resonates with a lot of us. Uh, Unfortunately, a lot of us have, whether we've been in combat, uh, also, and through losing a lot of our brothers and sisters due to suicide, and also, but also on our personal side, so if you feel like, actually, I would highly recommend that you engage with Zuri. Just talk, have a conversation, see if this is a good fit. I mean, at the end of the day, just that one strategy session, you may get some things that you can start implementing to bring you back, and celebrate the life and the of those individuals, of those loved ones that are no longer here with us. And by the way, if you feel like you're going into that dark hole, and that yeah, that the world is kind of caving in, that you feel yourself not being able to come out of it, reach out to me, reach out to our show. There's a lot of resources out there. There's Military One Source, there's TRICARE, the VA suicide hotline. I mean, there's ample of resources out there, because at the end of the day, nobody, a lot of us would much rather work with you, and help you get through that shitty time frame that you're going through, instead of saying some memorable speech at your funeral as a eulogy, any of those things. Nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to do that. So reach out to a friend. Have the courage and intestinal fortitude to reach out to a friend. Reach out to a buddy. And by the way, if you haven't heard from a friend, and in a couple of months, whatever, then do a buddy check. This is your homework for this week, and do a buddy check, and start the chain, and move it forward. So, but I think this is a good time to index. What an amazing topic. So with that being said, everybody, Ice Tomas, Daisuki. I'll see you next week, everybody. Hoorah, get some. Bye-bye.